Hello and welcome. In 2020, Mustafa Ekiul, my favorite writer and a global thinker, wrote an essay, Freedom in the Muslim World, in which he argues that the Muslim world has extremely low levels of freedom. Question is why? Why are Muslim majority countries less developed and more authoritarian compared to world average? To answer this question, I have with me Professor Ahmet Kuru. Dr. Kuru is a professor of political science and director of the Center for Islamic and Arabic Studies at San Diego State University. He is the author of several books, including Secularism and State Policies Toward Religion, the United States, France, and Turkey, and my favorite, Islam, Authoritarianism, and Underdevelopment, a global and historical comparison. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuru, for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Farah. Looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you. So first off, you recently went to Malaysia and you tried to visit Pakistan, which you could not. That is very unfortunate. Uh, you had to experience a lot of things in Malaysia and also some things in Pakistan. Tell me what happened in Malaysia. What was wrong with there?
So let me put things in a broader context. As you mentioned, I wrote the book on Islam, authoritarianism, and underdevelopment about 5 years ago. It was an academic book, alhamdulillah, well received in academia, but there was substantial non-academic attention. So then I decided to go the countries where the book has been translated. And so far, so good. After COVID, I visited not only non-Muslim countries, majority of countries, of course, there are Muslims there too, Belgium, Netherlands, where the Dutch edition came out, and France and Germany, where the translations are coming out soon, but also Bosnia, Morocco, and Indonesia. And wherever I go, there was positive reception because the book is very, as you know, moderate and middle ground that has providing, it is providing a critical analysis with a constructive and friendly attitude. And since Malaysia and Indonesia are geographically and historically connected, I thought the Malay reception would be similar. But starting on Facebook first, then the email and Twitter exchanges continued. There was negative reaction. One particular individual categorized me as a liberal together with some others with very diverse views. Some are feminists, some argue even that the Quran was not written in was not revealed in the 7th century, but written in Baghdad in 8th, 9th centuries. So a group of individuals that I disagree with certain ideas, agree with them, a bunch of different people just labeled together as if all of them are on the same page as liberal network, and as if we are connecting, networking. And besides that, the Malay authority, Jakim, religious authority, had a fatwa saying that this network is against established norm of religion in Malaysia. Therefore, it is illegal, kind of.
Right.
So they were implicitly saying that I'm an apostate or close to be one. So then this guy, I think, had on Facebook thousands of likes and shares, 4,000 shares. I never saw on Facebook, even Jon Stewart's declaration of coming back to Comedy Central didn't initially get 4,000 shares. So then, but when we analyze...
You became a celebrity.
This guy is a celebrity and he attacked me and his attack became famous. I became infamous. Yeah. So my wife then told me that, Ahmet, this is a cult. This is not a reasonable reaction. Look, all of the people share with saying Inna lillahi inna ilayhi rajiun, which is you know, a verse in the Quran you say when someone die. And is this a death threat or not? It's a question. And then it's really a cult follower with no contemplation, critical thinking. They say, congratulations, great scholars, you gave liberals the lesson, etc.
Right.
So that was the beginning. But then some other scholars repeat, and the most positive one was that you can understand now when I say it, how positive they were. The prophet, this Kuru can teach at or universities, but we should not let him talk in mosque because most people are open to manipulation. He can manipulate and confuse them. You see how offensive this idea. This is the most positive one. Then you can imagine the negative.
Right. Right.
The positive one really put mosque people, the community, Muslim community, like children.
Right.
Who have no ability to understand and evaluate what is right, what is wrong.
Right.
And even a book by a Muslim like me can confuse them. Therefore, they should be protected always. Therefore,
Right.
I should not be allowed to speak in the mosque.
Right.
So if this is the most positive one among these conservative ulama attitude of a particular group, of course. So this is one group of people. Some of them are cultists. They follow their leader. They have a specific name, etc. But that never happened before.
Right.
So one reason I think it never happened before is that Malaysia is one of the few Muslim majority countries with religious police. The other is Iran. Another example was Saudi Arabia, but now MBS, with all of his own problems, put religious police aside and weakened them.
Right.
But in Malaysia, they are very strong. In the introduction, you referred to Mustafa Akil and how Mustafa Akil was arrested by this religious police in Malaysia, Jakim, in 2017, is still a fresh memory there. So that's why immediately after this Facebook reaction, my friends remind me that Jakim can arrest me too. Then I even asked Mustafa, my friend, what happened to you? Can it happen to me? He said, as long as you stay in the boundary of social science, they cannot accuse you to come to Malaysia to preach religion without a certificate. That was the accusation against him. So to make the long story short, I receive hostile messages in Twitter, Facebook, and a death threat in email. The death threat is not saying we will kill you, but he said you shouldn't come here. They will kill you. Then they will portray as a suicide. So that was really a crazy thing never happened before. One reason I think there's religious police and establishment. The other thing is the cultish grouping of certain Islamists, whatever they call themselves, conservative Islamists. Another thing is my publisher. They regard my publisher, Islamic Renaissance Front, as some institution bringing challenging ideas. And as I said at the beginning, I disagree with certain of those ideas or agree with them. This is how scholars and intellectuals work. It is difficult to categorize and put them in a group. But the enemies of my publishing house dedicate and decide to attack anything coming out of them. That was another reason for polarization. And as if it is not enough, there came the Turkish ambassador out of blue. He has no business of anything in this academic matter, but he said, here I am. So he first intervened to ISTAC, which is a more scholarly institution, to prevent my book launch. We moved to IAIS, which is a think tank. Then the ambassador called them saying that Kuru is an enemy of our government, therefore you should cancel it. So I said, here are the things I said to my organizers of the book launch in IAIS. First of all, you keep talking about colonization. When did Malaysia become a Turkish colony? if it is not a Turkish colony, how come an ambassador dictates you what to do and what not to do? Second, did I commit a crime in my country, United States? No. And what is Turkey? Yeah, that's the country I was born, but how ridiculous Turkey claim anything legal against me because I don't live that country. I was born there. Is there a crime to be born in a country where you criticize the government? So 25 years ago, I left Turkey. And then there is no court case against me in Turkey. There is no legal charge against me in Turkey. Just this ambassador who maybe reads some of my critiques of Erdogan and Erdogan AKP government tried to stop me. Okay, then I told my publisher, let's find a university if this government link famous think tank is so afraid of Turkish intervention, then we can do it in a university. We don't need a think tank. But then it became national news, and then police started to come to my events. So initially, they just came to record. My friends told me they are there. In the very last event in the Islamic University of Malaysia, where I liked the place very much, and I am an affiliated faculty of the Indonesia's Islamic University. Therefore, I really wanted to see Malaysia's Islamic University. And then the dean and the organizers were very much under stress. I asked them what's going on. They say police came. And then after the event, they say the police asking my passport, my hotel address. They say we don't know. They didn't know. Then the police interrogated 20 minutes my publisher. So it was a very hostile attitude. So then when we were leaving the police car chasing us, then I went there with very high level political contacts. So I was supposed to meet the prime minister. I have friends with some foreign ministers. I met the 25 years old opposition leader of a Chinese majority party. And then I asked my contacts what's going on, what to do, and also contact American Embassy. American Embassy just asked me to leave, that they couldn't do anything. They cannot even call after Gaza. They have no credibility in Malaysia. They have a list of excuses. And the politicians, we are in opposition, leave the country, please. And then finally, I reach out some people in the Prime Minister office and the Minister of Interior. They guarantee my safety. Then I didn't move out of Malaysia. I was planning to go to Singapore. So to conclude, I went to airport, passed the customs, everything seemed fine. But before boarding, one policeman came, then it became 2, 3, 4, 5. They interrogated me. Then they tried to seize my passport. Then I refused. So we had an argument. I raised my voice. So you should be very careful with these guys. If you became very passive, they dominate you. If you became very aggressive, then they can simply arrest you and put in cuff. And then I was able to get out. They didn't give me the permission. I just said, I'm going. And then the plane is almost taking off. And then they were kept talking to some people in English. And why were they speaking English, not Malay? This is another question. So finally, I arrive. I send messages to my contacts saying that why did 5 policemen intervene, try to interrogate, put me in detention. And then I contact people in Pakistan who told me that this is no longer safe for you. It's better for you to cancel your talks. Then I canceled my talks and then went back to the United States. So sorry for taking too much time, but there are so many details. So one last point, what are the lessons I learned? First of all, the Muslim world has the problem of authoritarianism. It is so obvious because The police in Malaysia deny everything. Then my friends say, do you know the concept of deep state? We have a deep state which works illegally, without norms, without rule of law. I told them that, don't you know, I was born in Turkey. This is the country maybe that produced the concept of deep state. So this is unfortunate because no recording, no official explanation, no apology. So next time some people are now inviting me to Malaysia, I say, are you kidding me? So unless there is an official explanation what happened to me, will I
Right.
ever feel safe in your country? Because it's an abrupt situation that anything randomly can happen. Second, for the case of Turkish intervention, they never did something like that in Europe, the Turkish diplomats. In European countries, they pretend to be intellectuals. They are coming to my talks, asking questions. But when it comes to Malaysia, they see Malaysia from an Orientalist point of view. Oh, this is a third world country. We can dominate and we can dictate and we can be macho and bossy. No longer need to present themselves intellectuals. And at the end, as an academic, you and me, we need and want to explain things. But this enigma at this point for me, I don't know what happened really. Is this really the Turkish ambassador? Or are the policemen part of the Islamist cult who started the critique against me and unhappy with my visit? Are they using the Turkish embassy as an excuse, or really Turkish ambassadors order them to do things? These are all questions to be answered, but everyone is silent. They pretend nothing happened. But I learned my lesson. The problem of authoritarianism in Muslim majority countries is very deep, and especially anti-intellectualism.
Right.
Because if I was a diplomat, American diplomat, they couldn't do it to me. If I was a rich American business person, they couldn't do it to me. But we intellectuals are fragile because we only have ideas.
Right.
The word needed, but they don't understand. Many people don't understand that.
Right. Yeah, this is very sad and needs to be condemned without any ifs and buts. Second, you wrote somewhere on social media before you were leaving for Malaysia that you are not a liberal. What does that mean? You are not liberal.
So basically, you know, liberal means many things. In the United States, we have this polarization of liberal versus conservative. Even in the Supreme Court, we take the number 6 conservatives, 3 liberals. Of course, I didn't mean that way. I voted for Democrat Party for many years, and in the recent election, I voted for Biden. But this time, I publicly declared in Twitter that I'm not going to vote for Biden, because I'm taking Biden responsible for what he did in Gaza and full support of bombing of Gaza by Israel. So I'm not going to vote for him. Then people ask me, are you a Trump supporter, etc.? No, I'm not going to vote for anyone. But the declaration was not part of the critique of Biden. The declaration was an attempt to survive. I don't want to be killed in Malaysia. This is so simple. And plus, I never call myself as liberal. Why are you labeling me for something? I make my decisions in life after very deep contemplation and thinking. And I define myself as a Muslim, for example. It's a result of a very deep contemplation. I define myself an American. I decide to be an American after so much thinking and investing my mind. So I never made such a decision for being liberal. And then my response to them, who are you to label me and put me in category with other people? So that's why I put it semi-serious, semi-joke. And one thing I want to tell the conservatives in Malaysia is to work on semantics. Really, they need to work on dictionary. They need to learn languages. If they use term from foreign languages, they should be more informed individuals. Liberal is an English word with some French connotation too. And it never means anti-Islam in any dictionary. How ignorant you are to give a meaning to a foreign word which doesn't exist in this word. Another term, for example, is Allah. So Allah Jalla Jalaluhu is one of the Asma Husna in Islam. And every knowledgeable person, anyone who knows Arabic, know that the term Allah exists before Islam. And the Christians and Jews speaking Arabic use the term Allah. They don't say God because they don't speak English. They don't say Dieu because they don't speak French, or they don't say Tanrı because they don't speak Turkish. So in Malaysia, they made it a big issue that how come Christians use the term Allah? Then they try to pass a law that non-Muslims cannot use the term Allah. I think there's a problem in the Malay conservative debate with certain terms. They don't know this linguistic roots of words, and they should be better educated about that.
I think this is also, there are some problems about language in Pakistan too. But let's move forward. You initially said in your answer that labeling is problematic, that they label people and their thoughts in certain ways. So when it comes to authoritarianism or the lack of freedom, this is not something peculiar to the Muslim world. Non-Muslim countries like China and Russia, they also have similar problems. Maybe a scholar would not be able to go and freely talk in Russia and China.
Even in European countries, it is now a problem in Germany to criticize Israel.
So my question is, then what makes Muslims different? Why to categorize Muslim in a different way? What is the difference here?
That's a complex question. On the one hand, there is nothing exceptional with Muslims, and categorizing Muslims as different is wrong, because as I intervene into your question, now we have the lack of freedom of speech when it comes to criticizing Israel. Every country has certain restrictions. It's a matter of degree. Of course, overall, European and North American countries are more democratic than Middle Eastern countries. Nobody can deny that. But we should not completely romanticize Western democracy, and we in the West are aware of the limitations, therefore keep pushing and trying to make it better. That's one thing. The second thing is analytical category. So analytical social scientists analyze Catholicism. There were many books and articles about Catholicism and democracy. And then with the question, why many Catholic countries are authoritarian? And until 1973, almost all countries in the world with Catholic majority were authoritarian, except France, which was, of course, having at the time a very assertive secularism to push Catholicism out of public life. But after 73, Portugal, Spain, then after 91, Brazil, Chile, Argentina, many Latin American countries became democratic. So therefore, analyzing Muslim world is like analyzing Catholic, analyzing Orthodox, analyzing Buddhist countries. It is a scholarly category, as long as you don't argue that Muslims are exceptional. In my book, in the first chapter, I try to explain that there is nothing exceptional for Muslim society in terms of violence, because military violence is, in the last 100 years or so, almost monopolized by Western countries, America, UK, etc. But when it comes to authoritarianism and underdevelopment, my main point is that Muslims have very developed societies, and no longer the case. This comparison can only be done for two areas, China and Muslim majority societies, and maybe to some extent India. But it is very visible in the Muslim societies because both India and especially China are now having economic growth. Not the case for most Muslim countries. Africa, Latin America are not in that category because they never had that golden era teaching philosophy, science, the rest of the world. But Muslims had. That's one thing important that I emphasize the decline. Last but not least, when it comes to issue of democracy, Muslim majority societies today have very conservative ulama. And these ulama are restricting freedom of speech and alternative ways of thinking, which is not the case in many other religions, societies, because Catholic Church, now they have a pope, very open-minded pope, and the Catholic Church lost its control over societies in Europe and elsewhere. And then Orthodox Church in Russia, yes, it is politicized, it is part of Putin regime, but still, since society is very secular, its control is limited. Today, in Muslim societies, we have very religious people. Religiosity, piety is majority of society, which is fine. I see myself a pious person too. But when you combine piety with a very conservative clergy, that creates complications, especially if clergy is part of a political establishment, then democracy is very unlikely.
So this is not something that is that exists in Islam. For example, religion can be weaponized. Any religion can be weaponized in anywhere. Recent examples from India and Myanmar, Buddhism. How would you respond to that? That saying because Muslims or Islam have that clergy and political class alliance that you call ulama state alliance, is it a contributory factor or is it the cause? How do you define this factor in your analysis?
And you are absolutely right. That's why I'm writing a new book now on the clergy-state alliance here in the United States under the past and possibly future presidency of Donald Trump. Then the clergy-state alliance between Orthodox Church and Putin in Russia. Then the alliance between Hindus and the Modi government in India. And the alliance between Orthodox and far-right Jews and Netanyahu in Israel. And all of them, and in some cases, they couldn't come to power, like Le Pen's National Front in France. Less religion, but very heavy nationalists and Christian culture influence there. And all of them similarly are combination of religion, nationalism, and right-wing populism under the authority of a demagogue leader. And they not only attack the elite, because these are populist groups who hate elite people, but they also pinpoint outsiders. And the outsiders, in most cases, are Muslims. Trump passed Muslim ban. Modi, as you gave the example in the question, target Mughal Empire, and the Muslims no longer are comfortable whether they are first-class citizen or not. It's a debate now in India. And Le Pen directly attacked Muslims, saying that if I come to power, I will ban headscarf on the streets. And the case of Netanyahu, it's obvious that he's anti-Palestinian Arabs, mostly Muslims, because his political project doesn't include them as first-class citizens in the country. So therefore, then, my question to Muslims, overall, globally, are you happy with this trend? You may be happy if you are a majority Muslim in Pakistan, in Malaysia, in Turkey. But what about minorities? What will happen to Muslims in India, Muslims in America, Muslims in Israel. Unless we all accept the importance of equal citizenship, everyone, regardless religion, ethnicity, a citizen should be given full rights. Unless we appreciate minority rights, unless we understand and appreciate the importance of freedom of speech, then we will never really solve the problem of Muslim minorities and their persecution everywhere in the world.
So interesting. So as you talked about the United States and other countries, there is one argument that and 9/11 has been an important triggering point, making states powerful, giving them justifications for constraining civil liberties and freedoms. And how so? Because the Western countries like United States were approving whatever states like Pakistan and Malaysia and maybe in some cases Indonesia were passing laws to control political opposition or intellectual voices. Do you agree that th- the United States has contributed to the lack of freedom in the Muslim world in post 9/11 scenario?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, 9/11 itself was horrendous. Thousands of people died. It was a violent terrorist attack. But the post 9/11 policy of US was horrendous too. Not only the invasion of two countries, which led the casualty of hundreds of thousands maybe in both Iraq and Afghanistan, directly or indirectly, as well as many Americans die. But the concept of terror and terrorism made governments like monsters, regardless whether they are democratic or authoritarian. It gave them the chance to label any group as terrorist. China is now having a cultural genocide or cultural ethnic cleansing against 10 million Uyghur Muslims in China because of what is going on in Gaza and elsewhere. Now we no longer talk about that. And China say, I'm dealing with terrorism. And when they use this magic word terror, nobody can do anything. Same with Erdogan regime. They have Gülenist terrorists, they have Kurdish terrorists. They even label certain intellectuals as terrorists because they try to make a coup d'etat against the government. And the number of people investigated by the terrorism charge in Turkey, last time I checked, was more than 1.5 million. So if you have 1.5 million citizens investigated by terrorism, there is something wrong in your education system. How do you produce about 2 million terrorists in your country, right? And the United States is responsible for giving this power and authority to governments by starting a war on terror, then randomly using the term terrorists. And now it's used for justification of Israel kill individuals, thousands of them, saying that we are fighting against terrorism. This is a global problem and it's shrink freedoms everywhere.
So then there is a criticism of your work that the solution you are projecting in your books and through your scholarship in general is a Western model of modernity that has its basis on colonialism, bloodshed, exploitation of the countries you are suggesting to follow. So how do you reconcile this complexity?
Yeah, of course. That's why we should not repeat Western modernity. It's the wrong way. I never said that.
Right.
Look, yeah, what I said in the book is that there are four classes from history to present, every society: political class, religious class, economic class, academic intellectual class. My suggestion is autonomy and independence. if these classes are independent of each other, if there is certain autonomy of each of them, then you have justice, you have productivity, you have development. And it also leads in modern times to democracy. So between 8th and 12th centuries, Muslim societies had a very precious moment of independent ulama, to a certain degree independent bourgeoisie class, merchant class. The philosophers were eclectic to ruling class with patronage, but it wasn't a major problem because philosophers themselves were so diverse and they did not represent a single ulama type orthodox class. Biruni, Ibn Sina, Farabi, they were confused, multiple disagreements, and they didn't have religious legitimacy over society. Therefore, the fact that they receive money from government didn't create any ideological problem. But when ulama, with strong religious legitimacy, a very standard group, having well-defined orthodoxy, became a partner of the government, this is a very big problem. Like Marxist ideologues became pillar of Soviet Union. They justified the system, they shaped the education, and then killed the intellectual dynamism in the Muslim world. So initially, Muslim world from 8th to 11th century had something precious. Europe at the time didn't have any intellectual class, didn't have a merchant class. It had military aristocracy plus clergy. But after the 11th century, when Europe had this diversification of the clergy and the military with Gregorian reform, 70 years, the church had a military battle against the Holy Roman Emperor. And this division gave chance to intellectuals to emerge with the new opening universities. And this balance of power gave chance to city-states and bourgeoisie-run states in Italy, the Netherlands, and elsewhere. That diversity emerged in Europe. Even today, in Western democracies, can we say that we solved the problem of the relations between four classes? The answer is clearly no. In America today, for example, the bourgeois class control or try to control politics. There was a law, bipartisan law, passed and drafted by McCain from Republican Party and another senator from Democrats to limit campaign finance, to limit the impact of money on politics. But unfortunately, about 10 years ago, US Supreme Court struck down the law saying that no, companies are like human beings. They have infinite freedom of speech. They can spend billions of dollars for political campaigns. And then Supreme Court destroy the autonomy of politics, make economy controlling, at least heavily influencing. So you see, we have the problem in America too, but it's a matter of degree. So what I am suggesting in the book is that Muslims achieve something precious in their early history. Then later on, Europeans learn it, develop it, and reach to democracy and development to some extent. Today, the Muslim world, if we want to have a better, prosperous societies, more Nobel Prizes, more scientific contributions, stronger nations, we need autonomy. We should refuse combination of power among the hand of military generals, among the hand of mullahs in Iran, or certain monarchy ulama alliance in Saudi Arabia, at least until very recently. So that's what I am proposing. Otherwise, of course, the rise of the West had many vices, very bad things like colonization, slavery, exploitation, killing. But the Muslim Golden Age also had very negative aspects. There was slavery, there was the Zengi revolt. Zengi means African slave or African at the time. They revolted and it was crushed by the political authorities. And the Abbasi rulers, some of them were very violent dictators. The first Abbasi ruler had the name Sufa, which means the one who shed most blood. He was proud of killing and shedding blood. So Muslim golden age was made despite these dictatorial Umayyad and Abbasi rulers, because these dictators were not able to control everything. Today, modern technology gave governments more chances to control. That's why independence of the ulama, independence of merchants and academics from government is even more important today.
So here is another question. How is it different, the model the language, the overall context you are explaining for the Muslim golden age, how is it different from the rise of the Western capitalism? It seems like your focus is that with the development of capitalism, Muslims will be able to flourish, or they will be able to grow more. Is it the argument, or the argument is different? You're focusing more on the intellectual parts. What is the focus? Is it economics, or what is that?
No. So there are two questions. One, what happened in Europe? And what happened in Europe, as I said, was contributions of both bourgeoisie and intellectuals. Certain thinkers like Martin Luther, Reformation, not in terms of the details of his theology. I'm not interested in the details of the theology. I'm interested in how he created a balance of power, refuse the hegemony. This is the important thing, because when the Ottoman Empire having a hegemony in Eastern Europe, Middle East, North Africa, controlling almost all major Muslim cities except Mughal and Safavi cities and Morocco. Ottomans at Mecca, Medina, Damascus, Aleppo, Jerusalem, Cairo, Istanbul, Tunis, a long list. There was an alternative in Europe at the time, Habsburgs, who control Spain and Portuguese, Germany and today's Austria. The Habsburg, under Charles and other famous kings, represent clergy-state alliance. Catholic Church with Inquisition in Spain and elsewhere were strong ally of this Catholic monarch, sometimes called Spanish, sometimes German, because they control both areas. And the Ottomans at the time were trying to defeat Habsburg, therefore helping France, Netherlands, Britain. For various reasons, the Habsburg attempt to control entire Europe failed. If it had succeeded, it would turn all the progressive trends upside down in Europe. They were planning to destroy Protestantism. They would establish a Catholic hegemony. Europe would have lost balance of power and creativity almost completely. So, in fact, Ottomans, by fighting Habsburg, helped European progress without knowing what they were doing. So, therefore, basically, that's what happened in Europe. For the future of the Muslim world, I'm not suggesting a capitalist system. I'm not a capitalist. I had a business major, but I didn't become a business person. I could be richer if I pursue my business administration degree. But I said, no, I'm not interested in money. I'm interested in ideas, political processes. They become political science PhD. And a capitalist society would be a very bad society. A society dominated by capitalists would mean a society where only money works.
But you are living in a capitalist society.
No, it's not 100% capitalist.
Right.
And we are still fighting back.
Right.
That's why we have income inequality. That's why we have many homeless people. That's why we have the problem. So capitalism is not the evil. It should be controlled, moderated. That's an ongoing debate in United Kingdom, France, United States, Canada. There is an everyday debate. Yes, I live in capitalist society, but in California, we have less than your Boston and Massachusetts. California has a very strong anti-capitalist, at least intellectual attitude. And my university was on strike just a few days ago. So we are fighting literally
You're
against
making the history.
capitalism. Yes, a strike in a university. But this, at least we can discuss it. This is important.
Sure.
In Malaysia, for example, they didn't let me to challenge ulama state alliance because I was under the threat of being arrested. This is a big problem.
Sure.
In capitalist America, at least you can criticize capitalism. This is a good thing. This is how we can control the hegemony. So let me conclude by saying that I am not suggesting Muslim societies to become capitalist as America is. Every society will find its own balance. But while finding your own optimum point, you know, every society should remember that it's an ongoing debate. There is never a final point. And always we have to reject hegemony. It can be religious hegemony, ulama state hegemony, capitalist hegemony, and an academic hegemony should be rejected too. You know, the main promoter of, because we talk about religion and state, capitalism, what about academia? The main promoter of academic hegemony is Plato. In his very good book, Republic, he imagines a society where philosophers rule because capitalists are based on appetite, they are profit-based bad people, and the military is fascistic, representing anger. Only philosophers represent the reason, and they should be ruling. But a society ruled by philosophers would be a dystopia, a very negative utopia, in a way that philosophers, without having real knowledge of life in a rationalist, abstract notions of life, they would be very bad leaders. And one such leader now is in Tunisia. The president of Tunisia was elected as a legal scholar, professor, not a politician, not interested in politician, and he became the dictator of Tunisia.
So it leads me to my last question. What is the way forward? What is the way forward to differentiate between the classes so that there are four, as you mentioned, independent classes to a degree, if not perfectly, and to challenge the religious authoritarianism in the Muslim world? What do you suggest?
Yeah, when I grew up in Turkey reading conservative Muslim literature, there was a cliche that Islam teaches everything from toilet, restroom ethics to government. First of all,
We still have that in Pakistan.
good. We have many similarities,
Yes.
Pakistan and Turkey. If this is correct, then Islam should be open to be understood and taught by experts on all fields. Then nobody would dare to ask me in Malaysia or elsewhere, how come you teach Islam? I would tell them because Islam teach from restroom ethics to government. I am an expert on government. I come to teach Islam because it is about government. Who are you? Do you know government? You have zero understanding of political science. Then get away from here. That should be the discussion. The medical scientists should be able to talk about Islam, if Islam include medicine. But the ulama on the one hand say, yeah, Islam comprehensively control everything, and we have the last word about Islam. When did you become an expert on everything? Second, if you, the ulama, studying fiqh, hadith, tafsir, kalam, if you want to be the authority, then accept the limits of religion. Accept the fact that it is about ibadah, worshipping, some muamalat, human interactions, but you can never claim that it is about everything because your knowledge is shallow on most issues. The world is now based on division of labor, specialization. Even in my field, political science, one cannot say that I am the scholar of anti-political science. No, you have a subfield. Within the subfield, you have an area specialization, topic, team. That's how people respect you. If you can come and say, if you say, I know everything, nobody would respect you. So this is the dilemma, first of all, in the Muslim world. The humility, not only ulama, but also Islamists. I challenge Muslim brothers in Egypt 6 months before the Sisi coup. I asked them, you were telling that Islam is the solution. Now you are in power. Did you solve the problems? And they didn't have any answer to the challenge. What about the Sufi sheikhs? They are even more aggressive because in Sufi tariqas, organized way, Naqshbandi, Qadiri, and others, the sheikh is almost an innocent figure. The disciple should show unquestionable loyalty. But are they prophets? Because we had a prophet, alayhi salam. After him, there is no prophet. So as you see in the Muslim world, there are 3 groups. And in my book, I not only have a critical analysis of ulama, but I also look at Islamist politicians and the Sufi sheikhs. So in some cases, there is optimism. Sufis in Senegal are open-minded, tolerant people. Senegal is a Muslim majority democracy. Senegal is more open society than its Christian neighbors. And there are also good cases for ulama. In Indonesia, as you visited last year, there is Nahdlatul Ulama, 90 million strong religious group. I have personal contacts with there. And then Pak Yahya, their leader, initiate a humanitarian Islam initiative where they religiously endorse equal citizenship, saying that we no longer use the term kafir, non-Muslim, for citizens, because Indonesian citizenship matter for everyone. Then they appreciate the legal system and give legitimacy to the rule of law of the country. And this is an optimistic case if they continue in that initiative. And for Islamists, I went to Tunisia, met Rashid Ghannouchi 10 years ago, and I was very optimistic about Tunisian democracy, but unfortunately it didn't work. So therefore, these 3 groups are important, and there are some optimism for the future. Then there is the case of secularists. For secularists, first of all, I wrote about them in my first book. That's why I no longer refer them that much. My main message, and even friends, I appreciate that they let me come to France 24, their TV, to criticize French laïcité. And my main criticism is that, first of all, you talk about separation, but you try to control religion by secular state, dictate certain restrictions, and impose secularism as a comprehensive doctrine. These are the problems. And if the secularists in the Muslim world come to a better understanding, what I call passive secularism in my first book, tolerating, being respectful to religious diversity, religious practices, religious symbols, then defend secularism to a way that religious people can also understand, then we'll have a solution to all the major fault lines in the Muslim world between Islamists and secularists, between Sunni and Shia, or ethnic divisions between Turks and Kurds, Kurds and Arabs. That's the only way we can have a unified voice for democracy and development.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Kuru, for this insightful discussion.
thanks for having me in your program and for this conversation, Farah. Thank you.